Hi there, welcome to Sunnyside Journals. I'm Catherine. I have a flip through today of the main journal that I worked on throughout my Tis the Season series for December of 2021. So, first of all, Happy New Year's and welcome. This little beauty has totally taken up my December with all kinds of hopes and dreams and imaginings, and I had a wonderful time creating this journal. It's actually a journal within a journal and a folio, and but it's also quite a piece of art, I think, and really would be quite an addition artistically to any kind of Christmas display or a coffee table or um, to become a family heirloom, because there's plenty of room. The new owner will be able to perhaps list dates of birth, dates of weddings, family members, recipes, holiday recipes, that sort of thing. You'll see when we get into it. There's so much here to go through. I'm hoping I can get this done in one video. I will be also posting a silent flip through that just simply quietly takes you through that. So to begin with, let's just start with this so I can put it aside. Initially, I was hoping this would fit inside this lapbook, and it didn't, but it's still going to go home because it's holding Mrs. Cratchit's important spare papers that she may wish to use as she adds to her journal. These final papers here at the end actually came from the original ledger book. So there's just some fun things for you to use. A rusty little clip there holding them together. And this actually was originally also an accounting ledger book that I created into a little folio and made it kind of pretty. So that will be going along with Mrs. Cratchit's journal. So here we go. If you've been following along as I worked on it, I hope this isn't too repetitive, but I will explain a few things in case you haven't been watching. I know many people have a busy December. I certainly did. So if this is your first time viewing her, I hope you enjoy. And if you have any questions, post them down below. She will be listed in a little while in my Etsy shop. I will be posting that on my Instagram at exactly what time. So to begin with, I got this big vintage ledger in a box of Happy Mail last summer, and it was falling apart. It had holes in it. It was half full, still had some papers in it. And I know it's vintage because there was no postal code and no postal code for the address and no area code for the phone number. So that tells me that it at the very least is vintage, which is what I think it was. Not antique, but certainly old and well used, and now it's going to have a whole new life. So let's take a look. I had to fortify her spine. It was completely falling apart. So this is really strengthened beautifully now. I wanted it to look old. I want this book to look as if Bob Cratchit, the beloved clerk from Mr. Scrooge's office in A Christmas Carol, brought home this empty old book that was going to be thrown into the fire, and he thought maybe his wife could make good use of it, since they probably couldn't afford very much in the way of blank papers and empty books and such. So I just imagined that she took the time and put her name in it, and as is common back in those days, women usually went by their married husband's name. So I wrote in Mrs. R. Cratchit there. And we don't know her name for sure anyways, but as it works out, that's probably what she would have wrote on the front of a book that belonged to her. So I wanted it to look like she took whatever she had in the house, leftover fabrics, leftover laces, and sewed and fortified this book because she had intentions to keep her Christmas budget in here and write her recipes in here and maybe save a few special Christmas cards that she might have received or pretty little things that she found here and there, and that it became a real keepsake for her that she passed on to her daughters, who passed it on to their daughters. So you're going to see a variety of decades as if this book has been passed down. You're going to see very old and somewhat newer, and of course, as is ever with any of my journals, uh, just about everything has been thrifted or secondhand or pre-loved, however you like to call it, from estate sales, charity shops, yard sales, happy mail, and such. Not very many things that are brand new in this book. Off the top of my head, the only thing I can think of is this bulldog clip that I have rusted to look old. I purchased that brand new. But otherwise, if you catch up on all my other videos on making it, you'll see what is new and what is old. But I would dare say she's like 98% repurposed materials. This beautiful piece of metalwork, I believe, probably came off a piece of furniture. And you'll see it still has the key as a knob, and it's so pretty. And I knew this had to go on the cover of Mrs. Cratchit's ledger. This is removable, so if you don't want it to say Mrs. Cratchit, you can take this out and you can flip it over and you can put your own title on it. I love that you can still see cash underneath, that it's very much a ledger that Bob might have brought home from the office. I put this on in such a way that this knob, if it's driving you crazy, you can remove it and just have this beautiful metal piece, and it looks very nice even without the knob. I'm not going to take the knob off today. So when we go inside, you'll see I've set it up like a lap book, and I hope I have captured my impression of the beautiful chaos that is Victorian decor. They loved flowers, they loved sparkly things, they loved busy, they loved a lot of stuff crammed into one thing or one room. They just loved all the color and all the pleasures of pretty little artsy things. So you'll see that there's some things that in here look very old and maybe from someone who was poor, but then you'll also start seeing some things that maybe belong to someone who finally had a little bit of money, because as we know from the story of A Christmas Carol, yes, the Cratchits were very, very poor, but in the end, Scrooge took very, very good care of that family, and I take that to mean that they ended quite comfortable, if not wealthy. So let's start on this side and we'll work over, and I may just simply go through it quickly. I don't know, and like I said, I hope I can do this in one video. I've just used tea-dyed bias tape here to make a tie to keep this little bundle together on this side. I've created some flip throughs from old file folders because I think that's the kind of thing that Bob might have brought home from the office, and then Mrs. Cratchit did her best to pretty it up. The paper that I used here is extra papers that came out of this book, which we will go through, and it is actually from 1879. It's very old. So I made extra use of these papers, and I think that turned out very pretty. There's some tea-dyed fabric here on the hinge. I like to think that maybe it was a blouse or an apron, or maybe one of her daughter's dresses that she used a little bit of scrap to put back into her book. This little clock and ad here. The clock played into the story of A Christmas Carol, so I wanted to somehow fit a clock in here, and that's a phonograph, and I just imagine it's an ad for buying a phonograph, and I imagine maybe she tucked that away hoping that maybe one day they could afford a phonograph. Lots of room here for journaling. You could list people's names in your family, birth dates, wedding dates, important dates, and such. You could also collage them on here. This is vintage wrapping paper here, and this is a little bee off of a napkin, actually. Some more ledger paper here, which I like. I made good use of ledger paper in this book because I imagine if there was blank paper at the office, that might be what Bob brought home to her. Here's some sari silk that I used to create a nice loose hinge. And there's a little bobby pin, a little safety pin, and it's got a little tiny gold bell on it. Where are we? There we go. So I just imagined that she found that and pinned that there. This lady came out of a book. I fussy cut her, but then I decorated her up the way Victorians loved to decorate up paper decorations and such. And you'll see here the cover is quite sturdy, and the handle that's sticking out actually holds it up quite well supported. So I doubt you'll want to take the handle off, but you'll be able to if you want to. So again, more room for journaling here with tea-dyed paper. This music came from 1894, I believe. It's down here. I made another one of those tuck spots that can come off. It's just a calendar for December for 1900. I imagine that maybe her daughter or granddaughter put that into the book eventually, because A Christmas Carol takes place in 1843. So whether she was still alive in 1900 or not, we'll never know. A little card for journaling on that I fussy cut out of a book, and some tea-dyed paper. And here's a typical Victorian little illustration. They loved putting children into unusual circumstances, and there's a child in a festive, it looks like a baked potato or a pie. On this side, there is a journaling space. Of course, I did a bit of stenciling with poinsettias on it. And as I said, that comes off. It's a Gutermann sewing cover. It's a reprint of a Gutermann sewing needle book. I've included a recipe card of my mom's Yorkshire puddings, and that's my mom's writing. It's a scan, though. It's not the original. A picture of St. Paul's Cathedral from a 1940s tourist book that I have. And then this was from an old book I had, an old a cookbook, and it was just on spices, and I wondered if maybe that's something she would have tucked away and remembered, oh, the next time I'm at the grocer, I want to maybe see if they've got that spice. Down here, I've put in a little Victorian little kitty cat and basket with a bow. And then there's a quote there that I saved from a Christmas book that I had for a while now. And I saved this quote because I thought it was really appropriate for the Cratchits. It says here, "The joys of parents are secret, and so are their griefs and fears. They cannot utter the one, nor will they not utter the other." And I've been saving that one for a while for the right Cratchit journal to put it in. And I think that's the sort of quiet little quote that maybe Mrs. Cratchit would have put in her book. Now here, this tips out. You'll see it's a life insurance envelope that I've been saving as well. This actually is a genuine old postcard. You can barely read the salutation on the inside, but it was for a woman. I believe her name was Gladys, and she lived out in British Columbia. I got quite a bundle of postcards that she had saved at some point, and it was printed in London. I thought that was pretty, so that's the real deal. And this is from a book, and I've just backed it so it can be journaled on. Now, down here, I've made a little tag, and it just says 2 francs on it, and I made it look old, but it wasn't old. And this actually came off a Christmas gift to my husband and I from family, but I love it. It's so pretty. In here, there's a little tip out, and I imagine maybe Mrs. Cratchit was originally saving this because it's for beef suet, and beef suet is an important ingredient in plum pudding. And she, of course, making her plum pudding is an important part of the story. Now here again is a little swatch of the fabric that I used to create the hinge, the outer hinge over here. And this is from now it's gone out of my head. I'll post it down below. I received a complimentary box of all their goodies for journal making. Your Creative Studio sent that to me last month. And then there's another little Victorian little illustration there. They loved putting their hands offering flowers and notes and bouquets. And then I just tucked a few little fun things in there that maybe one of them would have. It's a page out of a Beatrix Potter book. I believe it's Miss Moffat. And a little blank receipt. This is a reprint of a Christmas postcard. The other one was real. This one is a reprint, but still a nice place to write, to do a journal entry on the back, or maybe put a recipe. This is actually from an old book. I'm going to need to find out what year it was because I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was old. Turn of the century. The other century, not this one. And this is originally what I had planned. I thought that I would put the folio, the black folio, in under there. I think it's a bit too bulky. You may think otherwise. It certainly fits, but the journal, when it's closed, there's a tiny little bit of an alligator mouth. But I thought I'd leave that to the new owner to decide. So in the meantime, I put in lots of old papers, tea-dyed papers. Some of these are actual vintage old paper. And there's some extra pages left over from this journal. And you can see here again where it says 1879. So I think that's pretty cool. An aged doily, another little journaling card that I created from a fussy cut out of a book, a rusted paper clip, and here is a tiny little gold French horn that I just put on the paper clip. And again, I loved this one because although it says a happy Christmas to you, it's got a horse on it. And I love that about the Victorians. Unusual choices for Christmas decorating. And I liked it. And this is an ad from out of a book that I had, and I liked it because it's for bakery suppliers in London. And of course, there she is with a beautiful plum pudding. Plum pudding, very important topic. So I thought she looked lovely. And of course, little bows and ribbons glued here and there the way Victorians did. Now here in the spine, I've added a key that perhaps this was their old house before they moved into a lovely new house when they finally could afford it, and she saved it. Maybe it's the key to the new house and she saved it. I just put that in there as if it meant something to her or meant something to the new daughter, and it was saved. And there's a little rose down here that's glued in, and of course a bell. That's very important in the story of A Christmas Carol because that's what announced Marley's arrival to Scrooge, and that's what changed everyone's life. Now on this side, I have a little journal that's mostly naked, so that there is plenty of room for writing in this. It is attached in a way, I'll show you, because I'll take this out and you can see it just slides out. There's a loop right here, and the back cover slides underneath. So that will keep it nice and snug if you need to. I have found while I've been working with this book that it's actually just fine laying right there and you close it up. So you may want to use it, you may not. It is just a pretty little journal. It was made out of an English grammar book, as I said, from 1879. It's very, very old, but I fortified the spine. I added some lace. I imagined maybe Mrs. Cratchit saved a bit of lace from the special collar she wore over her dress to get married in, or maybe it was lace from her child's christening gown, that sort of thing. Inside, of course, Victorian roses on the inside papers. There's a label here so that you can put your own name and maybe dates inside. This is vintage glassine paper from an old photo album. And then here's the original cover of the book. I did a bit of decoupage of a napkin and then some stenciling from a lace stencil on there. I love how this page turned out. So although it's not a Christmas page, it looks very Christmassy. And then inside, as ever, I love when I can save the original copyright date, which says 1879. Now, I don't know how much of this book I can go through. It really is mostly a blank book. I put very little in it of my own. I wanted this to really be a naked journal for the new owner to write in and glue in. Here's the original owner's name, and I had to put it back in. I did do a little bit of stenciling on it, but you can see this. It was signed 1886. So I kept that. I fortified the fold because it was going to crack. But there's room for more journaling on the back. And I really like when that can go back in with the book and go to the new home. And there's a little Victorian picture there that I fussy cut out of one of my many Christmas books that I gather here and there at thrift stores. And it's children and the mother playing a game around the table. I forget what this game is called. It's actually quite dangerous. I can't imagine families playing it anymore because they ignite the alcohol in the pan and then you have to reach in and grab, I believe it's raisins floating in alcohol. This is from a calendar, so the 25th, very appropriate, and just some people celebrating, and then another little tag that can be written on or put somewhere else if you want. And then this tips out. And again, ledger paper, a little bit of holly there. So again, just many, many blank papers. The pages here are from an old 1922 Bible, and it's the other side of the fold is the section from Luke with part of the Christmas story there. This paper is from Nancy at Wishes and Weeds. She does her fabulous lace tea dyeing paper. This is from out of an old Christmas book. I also believe this is from Nancy. It came in my birthday Happy Mail that she sent me. I put in a permanent bookmark. And then I'm simply going to do this so you can see through that it's just tons and tons, 136 pages, I believe. So it's a big little book. Lots of writing. We made this together. So if you look through my videos, you'll see that we made this Victorian bell together. And then in the back, there's a little pocket here, and I just put a present tag with Father Christmas on it. Just a nice little book. Now here is some fun here that I put together. We've got about 6 minutes to do this. I did a bit of collaging on one side. I've left this side for you. I would recommend that if you plan on being able to tuck the book page under here, collage very flat. Don't go 3D with your collaging. Keep it very flat and use a strong glue. If you don't plan on using this, you could even sew or collage on top of it. And then, like I said, just leave the book there. I found that it likes to stay in place right where it is. So a little more collaging here. This came out of a book. It's a poem about mother's hands. And this is genuine old cellophane yellowed tape. This is a sticker from the 1940s. And here's an ad for a place where you can buy spectacles. And I thought that might be something that Mrs. Cratchit would save. And I just sort of put together some little pieces of lace. There's seed pearls sewn on that. This is the same lace that I used to fortify the top and bottom of the spine of the little writing journal. So I just imagined that maybe those were from important things, and that was all that was left till they got worn out. Inside here, this is a little tuck spot, and then the front one folds down. This is a reprint of what they believe is the very first Christmas postcard that ever went out. I believe it was 1844. I could be mistaken. And so I just made it into a postcard again. And as ever with a Sunnyside journal, a To Nana's bookmark has to go in. So I've tucked that there. I created a little book from a vintage greeting card, or it's not really a greeting card. It's more like a gift tag. And I just made it into a little writing notebook. So I tucked that in there. Now this little area I created from business folders, and I specifically used the initials M and S to represent Marley and Scrooge. That maybe again Bob brought it home from the office and Mrs. Cratchit made good use of it. Here, just to make sure this stays in place, the front one, I've just used a rusty paper clip. And I just tilt it like that, and then this comes down like that. So in it, I have tucked in a few little pieces of paper. I've glued on some old vintage ledger paper that I received in Happy Mail. And I used an old atlas to create the hinge. Again, imagining that maybe Mrs. Cratchit just used what she had to create it. This is, again, another sticker from the 1940s. And this is from a Better Homes and Gardens cookbook, but it said fruitcakes on it. And I thought, well, it's got red and it's got fruitcakes. So I included it. Now in here, I've made a few little fun things that I really had a good time creating. I'm going to bring the camera down closer so that you can see. So right here, I have an actual old from the 1940s special photo keeper that my mom had with a photo of my dad in it. So I used that as my inspiration to create this one. And so although it looks old, this is all new. This is scrapbook paper and gilding wax, and I've aged it to look like it was very much beloved and carried around, and that Mrs. Cratchit loved it dearly. And inside this is a genuine cabinet card, and I just loved this gentleman's face, and I imagine maybe that's Bob, and that it's her, sweet Bob. And it says, "To my love." It's one of those Victorian ephemera stickers. And then I imagine that maybe he got the picture taken for her as a gift, and he included a little love note in it. And because we don't know her name, he just calls her his dearest darling. And then I just tucked that in behind the picture of Bob. So Bob goes right in there, nice and safe and sound. Oh, and of course, now he's going to give me trouble. Bob, come on, cooperate. There we go. And again, it just wraps up like this. And then I just tuck it underneath that lip. And that keeps it nice and secure like that. And I've just been keeping it back there. Now this is a tea-dyed envelope, again from Nancy at Wishes and Weeds. Does some beautiful work with tea dyeing and lace out in the sun. This stamp is from 1910, I believe. So that's King George and Queen Mary on there. It's really lucky. The Cratchits and I have the same initial. So I made a wax seal with a C on it for Cratchit and glued that on there. And then inside is an actual genuine Victorian Christmas card that I got a few years ago, and I've been saving it for the right book, and this is the right book. This is very old, and it's still got the original little string on it. And it says, I'm trying to read it now. I'm going to have to read it later because it's so tiny, and I don't have my magnifying glass. I love this inside, though. It warmed my heart because the signature says, "From Grandmom and Granddad with love." And of course, my British grandparents that I have that were born and lived in Camden Town, they were affectionately known in our family as Gran and Granddad. So that's very British, Granddad. And I wonder if my Gran, if she originally was Grandmom and her name just got shortened to Gran, because she was just always Gran to us. And then on the back, I looked closer, and this did say printed in Britain on the back. So it's quite appropriate. So the envelope is newer, but aged, and same with the little wax seal. But I had fun telling a story with this book, that it held all of Mrs. Cratchit's hopes and dreams. But I left room for the new owner. Let me back up here. I left room for the new owner. I didn't want to take over all the hopes and dreams, because this really should belong to a family, and write in it all their favorite recipes, maybe the important gifts that they got one year, or a special Christmas that turned out really happy, or maybe to write in new babies' arrivals for Christmas, and also maybe to write in the Christmases where you were missing somebody special and you just wanted to acknowledge that that first year that they weren't at the table. It's still nice to acknowledge that somewhere special. So, this is my tribute, my Mrs. Cratchit's Ledger. I hope you enjoyed this flip through. I loved making this book. I really, really enjoyed making it. And I know it's hard to imagine, but my joy even gets more full when I know someone else is enjoying something that I created. So this journal will be available in my Etsy shop very soon, most likely within the hour. I will post on my Etsy, so I'll post it on my Instagram, so you can find out there if you're interested and want to go over and take a look, or else make sure you're following my Etsy shop, and Etsy should notify you when the listing comes up. Thanks for joining me today, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope you had a happy holiday this season, and here's to a kinder, gentler 2022. We'll talk soon. Bye.